Hey, meaningful movers. Welcome back to Move With Meaning, the podcast where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversations to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Krystal. In today's episode, we are going in the marketing space. Really, it's all about self-promotion, but y'all know how it is and what we do. We need to set that theme, so let's go ahead and do that. The word of the day is positioning. This is to advertise yourself to a particular audience or subject matter. You know, your brand. A lot of times we are looking for someone else to sponsor us when we have all that we need to position ourselves for success. This setup can be so powerful that it not only impacts others, but your legacy. That's enough of me talking. How about we introduce our guest? And there's no one better to do that than himself, Brian. Why don't you give the people a bit of background about yourself and what you're going to share with us today?
Well, hey, thanks for having me on, Krystal. I'm Brian Fleming, though I've been called a lot of things, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an author and speaker. I've been a professional speaker for over 17 years now. I've written a few books. I never meant to do any of it. It all started with one of the worst experiences. A lot of people would consider it to be the worst, but it actually wasn't the worst. I was a team leader in an infantry platoon with the Army's 10th Mountain Division in Afghanistan back in 2006. I was inside a couple of vehicles that were blown up while I was inside them, and the second one was a suicide bomber who drove his minivan into my door of my vehicle in Kandahar about lunchtime, blew himself and his van into about 1 billion pieces right there in the street. I woke up laying face down in a ditch on the side of Highway 1, burned and bloody. Second and third degree burns, second to my face and neck, third degree to my hands. A year and 2 months at a hospital in Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. And reconstructive surgery, burn treatment, get my skin scraped off with razor blades while still awake and conscious. And then surgery and getting my head cleared back together and working through those cognitive and mental issues that you might have coming home from a war zone when your job was to kick indoors and go find bad guys and hunt them, and their job was to hunt you. So yeah, pretty intense way to live for that time. And so I came home after all that happening. I'm still married to my wife over 18 years later. This year will be 19 years. And I've been able to put my life back together, and there are different reasons for that. I'm no different than anyone else. I've been very fortunate, and I've been very honest with myself about the world and the way I see it. Some people don't always like that, but it's what works for me, and I love sharing what helped me and worked for me, the lessons and the things I took away from that experience that helped me get back on my feet and live a better life since almost losing it. And that's basically my mission at this point in life.
That's great. Well, the ending was great. Okay, let's
it always is, right? Well, everybody's fighting a battle. And so that's why it's so relevant, because you don't have to go through what I went through to benefit from what I learned.
That's true. I like how you described a painful situation in multiple ways. And we can kind of go a little bit into that from a mental aspect, but how you were able to basically maintain life around you. You didn't take on the aura of vengeance. You took a positive approach. Like the message of that is to take all of these negativities and turn them into a positive. It's almost like adding the absolute value around a negative situation. Throw anything at me. What I give out, the end result of this equation is always going to be something positive.
Yeah, well, our perspective on whatever we go through is way more important than what we actually go through. It's the perspective that's the steering wheel. Very true. And determines where you go after something happens. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. So you mentioned a whole lot of physical things going on with you just from a healing perspective. So you were healing a lot externally. What happened with you as far as mentally? I know that had to have some kind of impact on you.
Yeah, there's the physical, there's the mental, and then what I say is the spiritual or existential. That goes beyond just mental. It's the questions that religious people don't like you asking.
Oh.
I'll be 40 next month, and the past 3 years I've been having more of those questions come to me. That's probably way too deep for the length of podcast we're doing, but I'll tell you this, my point in that is I am always open to learning, and I don't have to be right. And we live in a world where religiously or politically or whatever this social thing is, people want to build a hill that they have to defend. But what if there's mountains surrounding that hill and you just choose not to see them, or you've been taught to ignore them? You're kind of denying reality. But yeah, with the mental health aspect, I did have some post-traumatic stress. I don't think it was like a lot of people think it would be. I think a lot of people have this idea, like this image in their head somebody with post-traumatic stress, they're maybe crazy or they're sitting in a corner, like shaking uncontrollably, and they're mentally unstable. You have to like keep your eye on them. There are people like that, but then there are people like me who are just, all right, well, I got hurt. Now I'm alive still, so let's figure out, where am I going next in life? What am I doing? What's for lunch? With the occasional getting stressed out or seeing or hearing something and just really frustrates you and gets you mad, and then you go, okay, I overreacted. You do that a few million times over 18 years, and then you start to realize, oh, I can recognize when I'm starting to feel that way, and I don't have to act that way. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, and this guy was a psychiatrist, a brilliant guy. He said between stimulus and response, between what happens to us and how we respond, there's a space. And there in that space is where our freedom is. Now, that space can be really, really freaking small sometimes because we experience something, we have a knee-jerk reaction, and we just respond like by habit. We're better people when we learn to try to recognize that space and feel the rush of emotion coming on and then go, oh, I usually do path A and it doesn't end well for me or people around me. Okay. I see what's happening. And this is all happening in microseconds, but it's like slowed down in my mind. And it's like, okay, let's take a deep breath here. Okay, what did you mean by that, guys? What's going on here again? Can you explain? And suddenly the hand grenade didn't blow up, but rather, it can be used for better purposes in other situations that are more productive.
Oh, I've had so many moments like that. But when you're reflecting on them and remembering these moments in time, it does slow down. You have had so many different thoughts that came through your mind. I don't know. It's just amazing the power. Like I always say, power in the pause, but there's power in decisiveness and power in being open-minded. And like you said, just being open to not always being right.
One of the difficult pieces of that is if you have, let's say, post-traumatic stress or something like that, and it was caused from a survival sort of experience you had that was negative, that can be exceptionally hard because in the military, we're taught to react to contact with deadly force. It's like if you think in the moment, you're probably going to get shot. When X happens, this is response. Because that's what we know to have the highest survivability rate. Like, I mean, if you're in an ambush, you get ambushed. You don't stand there and go, oh no, guys, we're getting ambushed. No, like the first thing you do is not take cover. People don't realize that.
Oh.
If you walk into a place where people start shooting at you, your first instinct is to get down and take cover. That is not the most productive stuff. That is not how you're trained in the American military to respond. The first step is to return fire and gain fire superiority. You just turn on your enemy and you start blasting away toward them. You get their heads down, and then you get cover and you maneuver around and you conquer and take them over. So my point with that is a lot of people have this survival-based, maybe PTSD or whatever it is, and they have this knee-jerk reaction because their experiences have trained them when this happens, act this way. If you grew up in a bad neighborhood, somebody yells a certain phrase, and it's like, oh, last 5 times I heard that, I had a gang of people try to beat me up. Well, you hear that, you go, I'm not even looking. I'm responding,
Yeah.
And so our lizard brain, our survival brain, a lot of it's subconscious. We don't even know this is going on. And then we look back on it and go, why did I respond that way? It's because the wiring in your brain has been programmed to respond that way with that particular stimulus, that thing that was said, or that situation. Or if somebody starts firing at me, like I have no doubt my first instinct now being out of the military all these years is probably going to, to return fire back as I'm taking cover or right before I do. And it doesn't make any sense, but it does. It's just instinctually it does. And people would think you get down first, then return fire, but then the enemy has your head down. And so my point, I guess, is that there's so much to how we respond to things. Don't be too hard on yourself. You probably don't understand entirely why you act the way you do, but as you're able to learn that, you can really gain some control over your life and your mind and yourself that you never knew you could have. And it's pretty amazing when you have that awakening, I would say.
That is a great way to characterize triggering. And I like to say that because in pun, not
literally
intended.
triggering.
Yeah, I was just about to say. But I like the different analogies that my guests come on with this because, like you said, everyone's wired differently, but something's going to connect, but they all made the same thing. That is so creative of you. Now, you mentioned you were kind of healing, right? And so during recovery, this was a great milestone moment for you where you met someone, right?
Yes.
Tell me about this meeting.
Yeah, I met somebody I did not intend to meet that led me to some opportunities I didn't know I'd have that would lead me to doing something with my life I never intended to do anyway, but it worked out really well. So I was recovering at the medical center, and I was in the auditorium on the 4th floor of the hospital with about 30 other guys who've been blown up and shot up Iraq and Afghanistan. And this guy who's a Vietnam veteran, his name's Dave Reaver, he came through and he was injured in Vietnam, horribly burned half his body off with white phosphorus grenade in Vietnam. Intense, horribly tragic story. Well, he'd been speaking and writing books for about, 30, 40 years at that point. And he came and he was talking about his story, and he was just like us, but from a different war. He was there to encourage us. He couldn't talk about his own pain and injury without making us laugh hysterically, which was really interesting because he's such a deep, insightful man, but also a real joker with a great sense of humor. And when you get those two things in one person, and they're a great communicator with lots of experience, and they have a business mind, and they know how to talk to people, and the guy's very successful. He's had multiple companies, some internationally, some here in America, married to the same woman over 50 years. I thought, if I can get 10% of what this guy's got accomplished in life, that'll probably be more than I ever thought I'd accomplish growing up poor in southern Jackson, Michigan, with basically nobody, being nearly on my own at 12 years old. Well, anyway, I met him. I said hi afterwards. We talked. We kind of hit it off. And one thing led to another. He became my mentor, not just in life, but in speaking. He basically said, well, Brian, if you're interested, I'll teach you how to do something with all this. Because it's exactly what he had done very successfully decades ago. And he's still doing it.
Yeah.
He's, Vietnam veteran age. He's getting up there and he's still doing it. And so somebody came into the story of my life unexpectedly. And I'm so fortunate for that. I will take all the credit for all my hard work I ever do. I'm not going to be humble about that. If I work my ass off, I'll take credit for the product of that, what comes out of that. Meeting this man was not in my doing. I can't take credit for it. But it was like a 1-degree shift that just changed everything. I was 9 months from getting out of the military, no idea what I was going to do. I'm optimistic, but, didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. Met him, he trained me, he put me on a lot of his stages that first year. He probably gave me 5 years of experience in about 9 months. By that time, I was meeting all kinds of people who were, saying they're not suicidal anymore. They think they can keep going because if I can make it, they can too. Then I was being paid to go speak and share my story with the intent of sharing the lessons that I learned that could help the people in the audience with what they were dealing with. And so suddenly I had this opportunity that was very meaningful to me because my worst pain was helping people. And that was helping me. And one of the things, Dave told me is, Brian, you need to understand people are willing to pay money to hear your story, and it's okay. It's valuable. I'll tell you the biggest thing that made the difference was when I learned how to position my story from a place of value. I don't show up and just speak and go, hey, I got blown up and it was bad. Have a nice day. No, it's like people don't care about my story if they're booking me to speak. They care about what my story can do for them. What can I help them accomplish? They see value in my story because they're trying to solve a problem or a problem for their people at their conference. So when I show up, I've already talked to them beforehand. What are they dealing with? And I go really in depth in the interviews prior to an event because I learned that my story, and your story too, anyone can use their story, position their story from a place of value, which means marrying your story to a problem people have, and they know they have it, and they hate that problem, and suddenly you are a solution that can help them make progress, whether it's 10 steps ahead or the next step ahead. And so I suddenly had this mission in life, and it was meaningful to me, and I had someone alongside me to help. Of course I made it.
Yeah.
It's like, why wouldn't a person in my position make it in that kind of thing?
Yeah.
But I didn't always have that, and a lot of people don't always have that. So if you don't have those things, meaning a mentor and a mission in life, it's your job to go make it up and go create it.
For sure. Now, obviously that first time on stage was an experience in its own outside of all of that because I remember people saying, you should speak, you should go and speak. And I was in middle school or junior high, whatever we call it. And I was so nervous. I was terrified. And then you go off on that stage, you do whatever you're supposed to do, and you walk off and you're like, I just hope somebody got something out of that.
Right? Or I hope they don't all hate me and trash me.
Yes. And I remember a teacher had called me out in the class and said, that was beautifully spoken, and just kind of called out all these different points and did that in front of a classroom of people. And I'm kind of embarrassed a little bit because I was like, wow. But in the same time, I'm like, I was noticed. It was the first time that I felt that. What was it like for you on that first time?
The first time, I didn't know I was going to do it. Dave pulled me up on stage at his event, the first event of his I ever went to. I was in the front row, and he invited me there, and he pulled me up on stage about 30 minutes into his talk, and I didn't know he was going to do that. He says we talked about it. I don't remember. And so he points right down at me in the front row and says, Brian, come on up here. Tell him about yourself. Now, before this, he prefaced it with this whole, I got a special friend here today I want y'all to meet. Now I'm thinking, I'm like, I wonder who he brought. Like, who's his special friend? I thought it was just him. And he's like, oh, it's a war veteran because this guy got injured he got injured in Afghanistan, like me too. I'm like looking around, like, who is he talking? And he points right down at me and he goes, "Come on up here, Brian. Tell him about yourself." And he hands me the microphone and says, "Take 2 minutes. Tell him what happened." And I'm in burn bandages still. Like, I mean, this is like a month and a half after I met him. This is like within 9 months of my injury of getting medevaced out of Afghanistan. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was injured in July of 06. This was March 15th of 07. So I get up, I turn to the audience as I take the mic from him. There's 3,000 people in this audience. There's standing room only in this auditorium. It is packed. It's a patriotic rally right outside of Fort Riley, Kansas, in Manhattan, Kansas. I basically just said, "Hey, I'm Brian, I got blown up. I'm still here. So whatever, I'll figure things out. Hope you're all doing well. Go for it." I don't know. Worst motivational speech ever. Like, this guy has no hope of ever becoming a professional speaker. Like, this guy sucks, But it was kind of like getting a baseball thrown in your face at 100 miles an hour from about 5 feet away. It's like, think fast. And so was it nerve-wracking? Well, did you get butterflies, Brian? Well, there wasn't time. Like, if you get punched, you just roll with it. So some things in life you just react to.
Yeah.
It was that. But when I got off stage, this young lady came up to me and she said, "Hey, Brian," and she didn't preface this with anything. She just goes, "Growing up as a little girl, I was raped and molested. And as a teenager, I was raped and molested. And as an adult," she was probably 23 at the time, she said, "My boyfriend was abusive. We just broke up this past month." And she said, 2 weeks ago, I tried to kill myself and I failed. And I'm doing this like, gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't expect this. She just put this on me. And after that, she said, "But you know what, Brian?" She said, "If you can get through all that," referring to Afghanistan, she said, "I think I can get through this." And that was the pivotal singular moment in my life that transformed my life because of the direction. It was a 1-degree shift. It was very small, but it was massive.
Yeah.
Because I realized she's not going to go home and drink a bottle of pills or put a pistol in her mouth and pull the trigger. And somebody was helped because I was in pain. I didn't have advice for her. I didn't have anything to tell her that was helpful. Just knowing someone else struggled something intensely bad and they're still going was the hope she needed to see to keep going. And sometimes you don't need to give someone, 10 miles of advice. They don't need 10 years of advice. Sometimes people need the next step. Like, oh, how can I make it to the end of the day? No, how can you make it to the end of this podcast?
Yeah.
The next minute, sometimes people are just hanging on. Like, give me a reason not to do it right now. Just, how can I make it not to the end of the day? How can I make it through the next hour? And there's so many things that we are as people. Sometimes you don't even have to have advice to be what somebody needs when you bump into them. And you don't even know it.
Yeah. Ooh. And I like how you said that when we talked earlier, that this was a great moment where it gave meaning to your suffering.
Yeah. But for years, people would ask, like, what was like the one big lesson that changed your life? And I didn't know how to say it. I knew it was that interaction with that girl, but I didn't know how to say it. And then, to quote Viktor Frankl again, this was a few years later, I read his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which is literally, in my opinion, the best book ever written, hands down. It is the best book ever written for getting through horrible things. He survived the Nazi concentration camps, lost his family, his pregnant wife was killed. He survived and went on to have a very successful career teaching about the mental health according to the psychology of concentration camps and human psychology. And it was amazing. And Viktor Frankl, he said this when it comes to suffering. He said, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. When I talked to that young lady, when she came up to me and talked to me, that was a moment when I discovered a sense of meaning. And I mean, that jumped out of me. I didn't know it was there. This addiction to speak and to share my story, more importantly, the lessons I've learned through my story, I didn't know that was in me. And when you go through things in life and you seek to help other people, you will find things that come out of you that make your life better, make other people's lives better. But she helped me.
Yeah.
I discovered meaning because of her.
Yeah.
And so people say, "Well, Brian, you really helped that lady." Well, I didn't mean to, but also, do you realize how much she helped me?
Yeah.
Because I told Dave that night, I don't know what happened today, but this lady came up to me and said this. I said, I don't know how to do this whole speaking thing, but I'm going to do it or die trying. Will you help me? It wasn't this idea of, hey, I think I'd like to incorporate public speaking as part of my career success path or plan. It was, no, I'm doing this or I'm going to die trying. This is why I'm here.
Ooh.
And he's like, of course I'll help you. That's why you're here. And he did.
Chills. Oh my goodness. So now that you've made a career now on helping others share their story, tell me a little bit about what you do to get your story out and then how you built a business model around that.
Yeah. I mean, first I learned that people actually pay people to come talk about things at their events and conferences. And it's like, I was like, so you're going to pay me more in an hour than the military paid me in a month or two to come talk about myself. And it's like, surely there's something more to this. Again, that's where it comes down to. They don't care about my story when they're trying to pay me to speak. It's they care about what my story can do for them and help them accomplish. So I started finding groups of people that, let's say the military, for example, I've spoken to almost every kind of audience you can think of. And one of those has been the military. I turned back around and I thought, hey, I came home. I'm still happily married, even though I was combat wounded and I had one of the most dangerous jobs in the military. Okay, I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress myself. I'm not out of the woods entirely yet myself, but here's what I'm learning that's working for me and what is working for some of my friends. So I would go back to the military. When I would promote to them to have me come speak, I would just say something like, hey, do your service members, deal with marriage issues? Is there a divorce rate that's a problem among your units? Now, these are, hey, stupid questions. It's, hey, I know there's an 83% divorce rate in the military. All right. So I already know this. And I said, well, I came home from war after being injured by from Afghanistan, being injured by that suicide bomber. And my wife and I were still very happily married. And, there's some things that we do that I think can be helpful for your service members who are just like us. Would you like me to come talk about that? Or would that be helpful if I did? And it's amazing when you position yourself as a solution to a problem. They go, oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Did God send you? It's like everything you just said is literally perfect. Yes, we need to talk. Now, what they don't understand is that it was very strategic.
Yep.
I found out what they're dealing with, how they word it. Well, I mean, in that case, I lived that life. I already knew the lingo. And so I just structured all my messaging around that. And then I went and delivered killer speeches on it. Surprise, surprise. They liked it because it was relevant from someone like them who had been through the same thing and succeeded. And now I was teaching them ways they can too. And if they'll go take one or two steps that I taught, they can see an outcome that they want to get. And so when that happens, people go, wow, that Brian guy came and talked and that was really effective. Like, yeah, we took this away and did that. And well, now we communicate better. And it's like, well, now if you're in charge of a military unit, who would not want to hire me to come talk to them?
You're right.
Because I'm exactly what they need. Now I have other friends who are speakers and they are too.
Yeah.
But that's how you use your story to make a difference in the world.
Ooh, that's good. You had another great saying too that added to that was that you had everything that you needed. You had a story. I love that. I love that so much. And
well, everybody has a story. That's the thing. Nobody's story is better than someone else's. It's just about how you use it and who's using it to make a bigger difference or helping more people in a particular unique way.
100%. Now, I want to ask you this last one. You said that this affected not only just you, but your future generations. Your entire family tree was transformed. That is a big deal, in my opinion. How did that happen?
Yeah, people talk about, hey, this stuff will change your life. Imagine if somebody gave you an offer and they said, this will change your family tree.
Yeah.
We're talking generational differences. Like I said, I grew up very poor. Yeah. And my parents divorced when I was 12. My mother lived 2,000 miles away. And I went to live with my dad. And then he went to jail. So I was living at my grandmother's house, which was a rundown shanty of a home. And she was working all day to pay bills. So I was basically alone. And I didn't come from a place where people said, hey, entrepreneurship. Hey, you can build a business. You can do what you want with life. It was a factory town that was on a decline right before all that stuff crashed. And it was crashing while I was growing up. And there was basically nothing. I learned a new way to live and do life. I learned that I can actually take what I am and produce value out of it in order to make a difference in the world, solve problems in the world. And with the speaking thing, at least, turns out there's a lot of money in speaking. I never knew that. I didn't know anyone did this, but it turns out there's a lot of money in it. There's a lot of ways to make money in it. And now that I know that, my kids, they've grown up in a safe neighborhood, unlike me. They've grown up in good schools. I've been able to give them things and teach them things I never had. because I know things that can get me there. And yeah, money has a lot to do with that. Money can buy happiness. People say it can't. I think people who say it can't never had enough to know whether it could or not. If you're talking about lasting ultimate meaning in life, yeah, money won't do that. But money can help you avoid a lot of situations that will stress you out and break your marriage. By the way, most marriages that, end in half of them or more end in divorce.
Yep.
One of the leading causes is money problems, money troubles.
Yep, it is.
So there's that piece, the money piece, but there's also the fulfillment. Like, my kids can see me enjoy what I do and have this idea that work, yes, sometimes you have to do work that sucks, but also you can do work that you like and do really well with it and enjoy it. I don't know about you. I didn't see anyone doing that growing up. It was always like, gotta go to work, and hate life. And, we're just getting by. And it's like, that's no way to live. And I met Dave and I'm like, oh my God, like, this guy's an incredible life. And he has this whole organization of employees who they have lives and it sustains them too. And they're all doing a great thing together and they all believe in what the whole mission of the thing is. Yeah, meeting him didn't just change my life. It changed my family tree. You want to do something with your life that can have that kind of impact.
For sure. Well, this was great. I got a lot out of this conversation and my noodle's just buzzing right now. Do you have any golden nuggets? Just add that ketchup to recap.
Your story has more power than you can imagine. It has the power to transform the world in so many ways you don't even probably know or realize. And you look at other stories, people's stories, maybe like mine or someone else's, and you say, oh, look how bad theirs was. Mine isn't that bad. Your story matters just as much. It doesn't have to be some crazy story to help people. Your story helps people when you pull value out of it and you identify problems that people have that you can help solve. That's when your story really comes in. You can just make a huge difference there. And again, you can have a more fulfilling life. I mean, life is better when you're helping and doing things for other people. Like, it's fun to go out and pursue your own things, and that's important. But when you're helping other people grow and become better or overcome things, the amount of personal satisfaction and fulfillment is, the sky is the limit. And that's where a lot of that personal sense of fulfillment and meaning comes in that so many people are lacking today. I think it's like something, 70+% of Americans hate their jobs. Like, people are not fulfilled. It's because I think a big piece has to do with they're going along a route they've been taught they're supposed to follow, but it's not the one that inside of them innately they know that they truly need and want to follow. Every time they try to follow it, the mom or the teacher or the parent or the grandparent says, oh no, don't become an artist. You need to go become a doctor. Don't do that. Do this instead. And there's all these frameworks of thinking that we're brainwashed with and programmed with. And then we wonder why we live these lives of what was said of quiet desperation, because we're not doing a thing that we know we're supposed to be doing. We're covering it up. We're ignoring it because the voice in the world is louder right now than the voice inside of us. It's just overshadowing it. You get to a point where you're either going to do everything and regret that you never went your own path, or you're going to have to tell the outside voice to shut up. And I don't care if you agree with what I'm doing it. This is my life. I have one to live. When you do that, you'll face a lot of resistance. But man, the journey is so incredible. And as you start winning, it's amazing how people who talked against you will start to go, we knew you always had it in you. Or you can understand what our concern was, right? Yeah. Follow your heart. You can follow your heart. Every time I've ever followed my heart in my life, I was right. And I came from a very religious upbringing that taught me my heart was wicked and it was deceitful among all other things, and that it cannot be trusted. I laugh in the face of that kind of scripture because I've trusted my heart 3 or 4 times in my life. It was joining the military during a time of war as an infantry soldier, marrying my wife, speaking career, doing all of that. Those were all high risk. Don't do that. My wife and I talked on the phone for 5 months, met for 5 days in person, and then got married 3 months later. We're still together. This year is 19 years of marriage. All right. Every time I've trusted my heart and followed my own path, I fucking won. Yeah. You don't win every time, or you do get messed up along the way. But every time that was pivotal and I listened to my own voice and not everyone else's, I won. And I'm still doing it. So to answer your question, what's the golden nugget? Tune out the world sometimes. And if you feel like you're supposed to go in a different direction, do it.
All right. Look at that. The storyteller and the brand maker got you going on here. And that's the episode today. It's important to note the impact that change has on yourself. Sometimes we forget about the effects that physical trauma can have on us mentally. Even in our darkest moments, there is a twinkle that inspires us to take a small step towards that. Even in that small step, which seems like an inconsequential task, creates a huge impact. It's like a small stone in a large pond, creating ripples of inspiration, motivation, and hope. So I ask you, what kind of ripples do you want to make? I truly hope that Brian's story has inspired you today and put you on a path that will leave a legacy of resilience for generations to come. Literally, perhaps you have a story, but are hesitant to make the next step, or maybe you are all too confident, but working on the translation. I'm sure Brian would love to hear it and can help you realize the value you bring. I love it all, and so will someone else. Before I let you go, Brian, why don't you go ahead and remind the people who you are, where they can find your resources, or reach out to you.
Yeah, if you want to book me to speak, go to blownupguy.com. It's easy to remember. I'm a guy. I got blown up, blownupguy.com. If you want to know how to use your story through speaking and make a difference in people's lives and make money doing it, check out useyourstory.com.
Fantastic. I'll make sure to include all of Brian's resources and connections in the episode description, as well as on my website's resources page, movingwithmeaning.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving With Meaning, the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. I am on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Please share, like, repost, and follow. Tag someone. We are creating a community. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at movingwithmeaning82 and on Pinterest at Arthur KB Clark. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble in TikTok at Krystal B. Clark. My Etsy store has some handy dandy digital downloads. Lastly, run over to my YouTube channel and have a look or two. Links are in the episode. Alrighty, I'm Krystal on Moving With Me, the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.